Gignac had not only mastered the art of the con, he had given it his own unique spin. In a stroke of genius, he combined the classic tricks of old-school grifters, stealing a famous name, striking an elaborate pose, with the look-at-me obsessions of the social media age. Look at my Instagram to see whom I have been involved with. He wrote me from jail, as if to say, how could it be a lie if I'm posting it? He turned his ethnicity into an asset, capitalizing on the fact that many white Americans can't distinguish between a Hispanic and an Arab, especially if they're blinded by plenty of blank. And like many con men before him, Gignac understood the nearly universal appeal of royalty. Even the rich and powerful, it seems, can't resist the crown. If you're trolling for a big fish, the idea that standing behind you is the royal family of Saudi Arabia, people with access to billions and billions of dollars, that resonates, says a Miami businessman who watched the prince in action. It gives you credibility. It all adds up. But to take his con to the next level, Gignac needed something he lacked: access to the super rich. He sought someone with connections and class, a frontman who could open doors to those with the real money. He found him in Carl Martin Wilson, a 51-year-old British asset manager who was working out of his home in a small town in North Carolina. Born in the suburbs of London to a working-class family, Williamson arrived in America in his 20s and married a North Carolina girl he'd met while in the British Royal Navy. Handsome and charming, Williamson offered Gignac a veneer of legitimacy. He had no police record, experience in law and finance, a British accent that sounded positively royal, and a vast network of international connections. Carl had a Rolodex that was probably thousands of people, says his wife, Denise. Like Gignac, Williamson specialized in impressing people with the names and titles of his far-flung contacts. Some were legit. He claimed that he knew everybody under the sun. Recalls Dalal bin Saud bin Abdulaziz, a real Saudi princess who spoke with Williamson several times by phone. Last I heard, he was with somebody who was portraying himself to be a prince. But others were bogus. He was a master global networker, says a former colleague. His line of bullshit would change depending on the person he was talking to. If you didn't have a connection, he would be like, "Yeah, I know the guy. Let me go ahead and call them." It was freaking amazing. Then, one day in 2015, Williamson met a man whose talent for bullshit matched his own. He was called by this guy who's claimed to be a Saudi prince, says Denise. Gignac showed Williamson his bank statement, which indicated that he had $600 million in his account. There was definitely, early on, the promise of great wealth, which excited Carl, says Denise. It seemed like he was talking to the guy every 20 minutes, from the time he woke up until he went to bed. Even though he had no contract and no salary, Williamson agreed to set up an investment company for the prince, one that would open only to a select and privileged few, Martin Williamson International LLC. The company announced its opening on LinkedIn on July 26, 2015. Its logo, a distinctive crown, its headquarters on Park Avenue in New York, and the Silver Tower in Dubai. Williamson also began to back up Gignac's lies. He vouched that he had known the prince and his family for 20 years. He purchased diplomatic license plates for the Princess Ferrari and Rolls-Royce on eBay. And he introduced the prince to an investment banker in London who specializes in connecting high net worth individuals in investing opportunities. At the prince's request, she demonstrated her devotion by lending him $150,000. "I was fooled," says the investment banker, who is suing the prince's company for fraud. "It was a big scam." The banker opened the doors for the prince. Before long, 26 investors were eagerly wiring a total of $7,957,252 through various shell companies to Martin Williamson International. In return, they thought they were getting in a friends and family pre-offering of the pending IPO for Aramco, the Saudi oil company. By enlisting the aid of investment bankers in two countries, Gignac had graduated from mere grifting to what an expert in white-collar frauds calls a very complex and professional crime that would have fooled most people, even most successful business people. One of the investors was Gottfriedus Fritz Franken, a respected Dutch tax lawyer known as a master of mergers and acquisitions. According to someone who observed the deal-making, Franken met with Wilson in Dubai and London and on Fisher Island. Wilson produced statements showing that the prince had $2 billion in the bank and said he owned $600 million in property, including the palatial new Four Seasons Hotel at the Surf Club in Miami. Franken lent Gignac a total of $4.9 million to earn the prince's trust, according to the Observer, and the money was later rolled over into the Aramco IPO. Franken was also required to show that he held the prince in high esteem by presenting him with Rolex watches and other extravagant gifts. In September 2017, Franken traveled to New York to meet the prince. At the meeting, he was introduced as the Swiss CEO of Martin Williamson International. The prince told Franken he was partnering with Bill Gates and Michael Bloomberg to build a new Four Seasons in Manhattan. During one meeting, His Highness took what seemed to be copious notes, which turned out to be as funny as the IPO scribbles, says someone who saw them, like a little kid's. Fritz is a successful businessman who was swindled by Gignac's complex, convoluted, and sinister fraud, says his attorney Michael Handman. Fritz provided full cooperation to the U.S. Attorney's Office, which hopefully will lead to Gignac's conviction. "We hope we will never again cheat so many good people." It isn't difficult to track what the prince did with the money provided by Franken and his other investors. Getting that kitchen. Gignac posted on his Instagram account beside a briefcase packed with bundles of cash. The Aramco IPO wasn't the only game that Gignac was running. In early 2017, after he finished the terms of his parole in Michigan, he headed back to Miami. As is customary for royalty, he was preceded by his emissary Wilson, who told real estate agents that His Royal Highness Prince Khalid was interested in moving to Fisher Island, one of America's wealthiest and most exclusive communities. An oasis whose residents have included Oprah Winfrey, Boris Becker, and Julia Roberts. He said the prince, the son of the king of Saudi Arabia, had just undergone gastric bypass surgery and wanted to be on Fisher for some privacy, recalls one local. The slimmed-down prince arrived for a tour of the island, cradling his beloved Foxy, and looked at high-rise condos going for $20 million and up. I've been in the biz 25 years, but he was top 10 over the top, flamboyant, all the bells and whistles, says Don Pingerer, a local real estate agent. He had the royal name, the seal, the bodyguards, the jewelry, the entourage, the business manager. He was looking for the best of the best. The prince quickly found his dream condo. "This is my palace." Looking the owner in the eye, he voted, "I will have $21 million transferred to you by morning." The money never came, but the long con had begun. Gignac enlisted Perla Lichi, a prestigious interior designer who has worked on Middle Eastern palaces, to decorate his new home. He was accompanied everywhere by an entourage of handsome bodyguards, low-level security guys hired from shopping malls and outfitted in suits, fake diplomatic badges and guns. He played the rich prince cliché to the hilt. Every single building you drive, he'd say, "Oh, my father owns that," says a friend of the prince. He'd just spend, dumping out of cash from Louis Vuitton duffel bags and typing $100 bills to everyone. Building managers, employees, handyman. He acted like he wanted privacy, but he wanted everybody talking about him. I live in a city of bullshit, but this guy's bullshit was through the roof. Gignac seemed to be reenacting the pattern that had started as a child. The more alone he felt, the more his lies increased. Unable to come up with the money to buy the colossal condos he crowded about, he rented a 3-bedroom penthouse on Fisher Island for around $15,000 a month and filled it with store-bought furniture. His funny entourage did nothing to ease the pain he felt. Lichi, his designer, shows me the flurry of texts he sent her. "I feel so alone at times, Perla," writes one. "It hurts." In his isolation, Gignac set his sights on one of the biggest marks of his career. Jeffrey Suffer, the dashing prince of Miami, whose family's real estate dynasty is worth an estimate of $4.2 billion. There's a larger-than-life quality to Suffer, read a profile in Notion Drive magazine. Maybe it's because Forbes estimates his net worth of $1 billion, or because he turned the Fontainebleau Miami Beach into one of the hottest hotels in the world. Or maybe it's because he looks like John F. Kennedy Jr. and he's married to supermodel Ellie Macpherson. Whatever the reason, the 47-year-old Suffer, although soft-spoken, exudes power. Suffer already possessed what the fake prince only pretended to have: a mega yacht, a fleet of private jets, and 3 palatial residences. But the Fontainebleau, the crown jewel of his empire, had struggled with debt for years. So, on March 24th, 2017, when a call came from a London-based investment banker who said she represented Prince Khalid bin Al Saud, Safir wanted to believe. The prince, the banker said, wanted to buy a sizable percentage of the Fontainebleau, and overpaid by what some say was as much as $140 million. Jeff thought he found a sucker to buy in for a crazy valuation, says one insider, but he ended up the one being swindled. Safir did not respond to requests for comment. In May, the prince, who told Safir that he was a direct line to the throne, wrote up in grand style of the Fontainebleau with Carl Williamson, his British investment banker, his entourage of bodyguards, and Foxy. He drove a 2016 Ferrari, California, whose license plates bore the word diplomat and an insignia associated with U.S. diplomatic plates. With a Visa card bearing the prince's name, he paid for rooms and incidentals, both for himself and for his associates. Soon he was telling everyone that he was doing a deal with his good friend Jeffrey Safir. The con was happening from the moment they met, says a source close to the situation. The negotiations stretched into August, when the prince invited Safir and his business associates to Fisher Island. They were given a tour of his garage, filled with Rolls Royces and Ferraris. In his penthouse, with the name Sultan on the doorbell, they were shown an ornate box, according to court documents, which contained a letter purportedly from the Bank of Dubai, guaranteeing the availability of $600 million. But before he agreed to invest in the Fontainebleau, the prince demanded that Safir show his respect through material offerings. He indicated that one of the customs of his country was the exchange of very lavish gifts during the negotiation process, says the source. So Safir presented him with a Cartier bracelet worth $1,500, followed by expensive artwork. All told, he gave the prince a total of $150,000 in gifts. Gignac tried to play the short con to rack up as many gifts as he could. You know the long con isn't going to fly unless he comes up with a couple $100 million, says the source. So it was. How long can I string this guy along until he figures out? To continue the discussions, Safir flew the prince to Aspen on his private jet. On the flight, the prince worked his Gucci-encased iPhone, posting a split-second video of Safir on Instagram. In Aspen, he stayed at the St. Regis Hotel and visited Safir's sprawling home, once owned by the real Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia and currently on the market for $29.5 million. But Safir's team was starting to have doubts about the prince, spurred by some financial red flags that had come up during their background checks. Then, of a dinner one night in the Suffer family at one of Aspen's hottest restaurants, the prince made a fatal mistake. For his appetizer, he ordered prosciutto. If the prince had actually read the Koran, he would surely have known one of its verses most familiar to the faithful. Forbidden to you are that meat, blood, the flesh of swine, and that which hath been invoked.
Back in jail, Gignac kept right on going. One day in the summer, officials of Syracuse University were contacted by Prince Khalid bin al-Saud of Saudi Arabia. His Royal Highness stated his intention to donate $45 million to the university. His only stipulation was that the university kindly wire a portion of the taxes for the donation, $16,000 to his account in East Lansing, Michigan. The bank account, it turned out, had been opened by Gignac's younger brother, with whom he had recently been reunited. Both men were convinced, and the prince was sentenced to 46 months to war fraud. An additional 37 months were added to his sentence when he lit his cell on fire and covered the floor with shampoo, hoping to trip up the wards and make his escape. In 1996, again from his jail cell, Gignac enlisted another attorney in Miami, this time to help him get what he claimed he was owned by his uncle, the powerful Prince Al-Walid bin Talal. When I called the lawyer, who asked not to be identified, he emitted a groaning response that it would become a comment to hear upon mention of Gignac's name. "Oh God," he moans, "I seem to be afflicted by him. He's a serious embarrassment to me. He could convince you that he was a green toad instead of a human being." To verify his identity, Gignac told the attorney to call Santa Monica College. According to what appears to the college transcript, Khalid bin al-Saud attended in college in 1992, earning. To verify his identity, Gignac told the attorney to call Santa Monica College. According to what appears to be a college transcript, Khalid bin al-Saud attended in college in 1992, earning a 4 in human biology and macroeconomics. The college, citing privacy rules, declines to discuss students' records. A campus policeman told me people would bring him to school in a limousine and pick up him, recalls the lawyer. One day, the prince asked the lawyer to drive to the Miami airport and pick up a famous attorney who was arriving that afternoon to discuss his case. No one other than Johnny Kochman, by the renown of his defense of O.J. Simpson. Kochman and his partner, Carl Douglas, headed straight to the jail to meet with his prince. Kochman was impressed, but did not take the prince's case. There were real questions about authenticity, Douglas recalled, but the Miami attorney who received his law degree from jail was under threat. I showed him a notarized letter he wrote to Prince Al-Walid dated February 4, 1998. Signed by his imprisoned client, it demanded that Al-Walid execute all titles to 8 properties that Prince Khalid claimed had been promised to him, including an apartment in Trump Tower and $34 million in Palm Beach real estate. The attorney stares at the letter. "I feel like a damned fool for ever listening to this guy," he says. "I had Khalid derangement syndrome. I cross-examine liars for a living, and I could not trip him up." It was outrageous on his face, but so is everything about Saudi family. He wasn't dealing with French people. He was dealing with Al-Walid. "Did you ever hear back from Al-Walid?" I asked. "Of course not," he says.
Investors all over the world feel for the sins of the man who called himself Khalid bin al-Saud, but the truth turned out to be more incredible than the lie. "My name is Kurt," he tells me, and I want to believe him. After all, he has traveled the world as royalty, the son of the king of Saudi Arabia no less. leading international investors know him as His Royal Highness Khalid bin Saud. He moved in an entourage of Rolls Royce and Ferraris. His every whim tended to buy uniformed housekeepers and armed bodyguards. A suave British-born CEO handled his business affairs and a well-connected international banker marketed his invest deals to a select few, leaving him to live a life of astonishing excess. Ever since he was a boy, he has been pitted against his royal brothers in an expensive game, to see who could out the other one in spending. He liked to sail. Khalid was surely winning. He was in negotiation to purchase 30% of the famed Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach for 440 millions, and he was selling early access to what promised to be the biggest IPO in history, the initial public offering of Aramco, the Saudi oil giant. Until last June, when the Saudi government shelved the plan, the IPO was expected to be worth more than 2 trillion. Khalid could regularly be overheard talking on his phone with the likes of Bill Gates and President Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. "I'm sick and tired of Trump calling me and inviting me to the White House," he often complained. He kept in touch with his father, the Saudi king, and FaceTime, and if you were rookie, he would let you listen in. But the prince's favorite companion was Foxy, his beloved Chihuahua whom he draped in diamonds. And the sinner dog clutches and toted around in a 2016 Louis Vuitton dog carrier. He stuffed other Louis Vuitton bag with a stack of 100 bills, tossing the money from his jewel-encrusted fingers, one spotting and 9-carat diamonds, to those who tended to his needs, flashes of benevolence from an academic genius, whose LinkedIn page lists his law studies at Harvard, his master in business administration for the University of Southern California, and his stock marks at Institut Le Rose, the elite Swiss boarding school attended by Rockefellers and Rothschilds. He lived in a penthouse on Fisher Island, the super wealthy enclave that sprouts across 2016 across south of Miami. But he spent much of his life on his yacht and private jet, which he chronicled religiously on his Instagram account, Prince Dubai '07. There were pictures of Prince Outlet bin Talal, the famously wealthy grandson of the first Saudi king, whose major stake in USA companies alone include Citigroup and Twitter. Uncle Khalid posted beside one photo, "My new yacht," he said in Instagram video from his travels, "my plan, and my Ferrari." There were endless posts of pieces of jewelry from his vast collection. Birthday's gift from the fam, he wrote alongside twin diamond watches wrapped over 10,000 bundles of cash. His Starbucks followers couldn't get enough. "Oh, Lord," groaned one. "I had spent weeks praising Khalid's incredible tries before his email arrived. As you might know, my history is not what it looks like," he wrote There is so much to tell and so much that needs to come to the light. He would tell his story exclusively to me. He promised if I left out certain parts, like so many of his offers, it was one that promised and wealth of opportunity in return for very little. In the end, thought I decided to decline because colleague wasn't writing me from his yacht or his penthouse or Fisher Island or his father palace in Dubai, but from a cell at the Federal Detention Center in Miami, where he awaits trial on charges of fraud, traveling on fake passport, impersonating a foreign official, and identity theft.